All right. Hello, everyone. It's Christina George and Chad over here from Paranormal Connections Radio Show. We are back for another Sunday's show, and man, I'm excited tonight. I don't know about you, Chad. This has been like pulling teeth to get this one
Oh
to
yeah, yeah, yeah. That means it's got to be good.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is a long time friend of mine, and she actually has been on my show before. Wanted to bring her back now that we brought Paranormal Connections back. And unfortunately, the very first time that she was scheduled to be on, she had a family emergency with her mother. And so mom had to go to the hospital. So, of course, you guys all know how when I was taking care of my mother, that happened every once in a while as well. So, completely understandable, not a problem. Then she was scheduled for last week, last Sunday, and all of a sudden she got a mysterious, horrible headache, like a migraine, which she doesn't get, and ended up in the ER, like literally right before the show. And, Chad, it's so funny because, again, we've been talking about this
Oh
since we
yeah,
started the show.
oh
That
yeah.
I think somebody trying to put a hex, I think we got a
Oh,
voodoo doll out there, something for the show, because I have never had that many people
fall out at
have
the
to
last minute.
last minute have an emergency and have to cancel as we have since we brought back the show.
Yeah, it's been odd.
We
Been
had a little bit
odd.
of there for a minute, but it's weird how it pans out like that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. No doubt, no doubt. Even some of the problems that I've had making it to the show have been insane.
Yes, you got kicked out of the show. We've
Oh yeah,
had
internet speeds and yeah, motorcycle wrecks and yeah, you name it.
yeah,
Stuff.
right. We have we've had EVPs that have happened
Oh
during the
yeah, oh
show.
yeah.
We've
Yeah, for
had
sure.
all kinds of crazy stuff. Hey, Jennifer, glad to have you tonight. Hey, Pat. So, again, as you guys trickle in, feel free to ask our guests or ourselves any questions that you may have. We welcome all of those. So, let's go ahead and get to tonight's guest. So, tonight's guest is Nicole Strickland. And Nicole has been actually interested in the supernatural since she was a child. And in addition to her innate psychic and empathic abilities, Nicole's experience in the field of counseling, education, psychology, and even social work gives her a unique perspective of the studying of the unknown. She's also known for her gentle and humble approachings to her work with the spirit realm, her clients in the paranormal field at large. She's also an author, a writer, fellow radio show host, as well as one of the leading West Coast afterlife and paranormal researchers, including the vast research of the RSM Queen Mary. Now, I know a lot of people have, either been to the Queen Mary or boy, oh boy, they sure want to go. And people are always asking me questions. Have I investigated the Queen Mary? And what do I think? And I've never been there, never had the chance. So tonight is the night to get these questions answered because if there's anybody in the paranormal field that I think that knows the most about the Queen Mary, it's going to be Nicole. And her books, everything. I mean, she's absolutely amazing. And as I said, I have known her for a very, very long time. And this lady is a true researcher and just an amazing person overall. So with that being said, guys, going to go ahead and bring on our guest, Nicole. Hey, beautiful. Welcome to the
Hi,
show.
beautiful. Oh, thank you so much for having me, guys. Listening to you at the beginning, I am again so sorry I had to cancel twice. Unlike me, right? Unlike me.
Yes,
Crazy
yes.
thing. Not a migraine sufferer, had the worst headache that started like right away on Friday night. And then I should have gone in Saturday, but I waited. And then Sunday I went in because I seriously thought, like, oh my gosh, am I having an aneurysm? That would be odd. No reason for it, but of course it was just a migraine. But I am if I go to the ER, it's serious because I don't
Right,
go. But it
right.
was just like I felt so bad because it was the second time. So thank you so much for your patience. And it's awesome to be back on the show. So
Well, don't worry about that because it had nothing, the conversation had nothing towards you. It's a running joke because since I brought this show back, like literally, it was probably like 2 out of 3 guests were having to cancel like last minute, like an hour to
Really?
two right before the show. And it was not like no BS, set it up. These are like all like longtime friends of mine, like we're really looking forward to being on. And it was always a real emergency. It was either like a family
Interesting.
emergency or something with them. And so we started making a joke about it because each time I would put up, I'm like, well, I might as well not even put up who the guest is. We'll just wait and announce it, the night of the show, because every time everybody gets all excited about this person's going to be here, something happens. And, we just cover something else at that time. But yeah, it's just a running joke with us.
Oh,
Hey,
maybe
Jill, nice to see you.
maybe it's just
So
some weird coincidence. Although I don't believe in coincidences, but maybe it's just some weird
It's
fluke.
a little bit more than it seems a little bit more frequent than coincidence.
Really?
Oh yeah,
Mm.
it's just kind of odd.
Huh.
but hey, as long as I've had this show, the weirdest things go on. So
Right.
I just kind of roll with it. It's like
Yeah.
what it is, whatever. If they're supposed to be on, they'll be on. If they're supposed to be here, they'll be back. And you can't. Life is life, so you
Life
just
is
move
life.
forward. And you, obviously, as a radio show host, this stuff happens. So you always have to have a plan B.
A lot of
So
people
Always.
pre-record their shows, and
Yep.
of course we don't do that, and so.
right, yeah, right.
Always.
It's not like pre-recorded, so it's live. So it's kind of like, okay, last minute, you just gotta like throw something together. Like we'll have a emergency meeting, and okay, what are we gonna discuss tonight? What are the hot topics right now? Like, let's go.
I hear ya. Yep. That's in some of those shows, those like impromptu shows are the best ones too. It's crazy how
Yes,
that works out.
yeah. Well, and again, like a lot of time, that's like when we take on like questions or like top things that are going on, in the field or whatever, things like that, things that people weren't planning on. So, and then sometimes we just, whatever people want to talk about and want to ask, we just address those. So, yeah, so they're very interesting shows for sure. It's a lot less
Mhm.
planned or, strategically set up of like what you're going to
Right.
ask and stuff.
Yep.
So, what has been up with you? Because, boy, you are so, I say what's up with you. You are so busy. It's like I can't even catch up with you because you're just something all the time.
It's weird how it plays out too. I've known you for years, and it's like
Right.
we haven't like done a show in so long, but yet it feels just like yesterday, right?
Yes.
It's weird. It's been a weird year, and with you guys, I'm sure present at conferences and libraries and whatnot. And usually they request, end of August, September for that month of October. But this year, it's been pretty much all year long. And I've been getting requests like back in January and March and all of that. So yeah, I have like 11 presentations coming up and counting too. It's insane. I don't even know, and just with writing and everything, it's time management. That's
Yeah.
really what it is. But
And
I'm
you're good
just,
at what you do, Nicole. You're really good at what you do. So I think that
oh,
over all these years doing it, it's just like you got it down. It's just like, okay,
likewise.
let me
Yeah,
put it
thank
out there.
you. Likewise to you both for sure.
So what about the Queen Mary? So,
Oh,
you know that like when I put that you were going to be on, the majority of like the private messages and things I was getting across social media was, oh, we want to talk, we want to hear about the Queen Mary because
Queen
that
Mary.
is one thing, one place that specifically you are very, very well known for.
Yeah, it's weird how that plays out. I never planned it. It just happened. So how many of your listeners do you think have been to the ship or have never been? Like what types of, because I can go
I've never
on a
been there. I've
tangent.
always wanted to.
I can go
I
on a
would,
tangent and talk about
no,
whatever.
you definitely can. I would say maybe 20% of them have
Okay.
actually been, but the other 70 either want to be or it's like on one of their, top places to go.
Yes, absolutely. And that's how it is for me with places being out here in California, like Gettysburg, for example, is in my top 3. And I'm going there next August with the Ghost Research Society. So, but it's weird how that, the grass is always greener on the other side. But it's so hard to talk about the Queen Mary in just such a short time. And because I know so much about the ship, it's hard to condense it. So I'll just give a very quick like bare bones history of it. So back the
Before you
design
start, before
part.
you start, just because I was with Tammy Benjamin all weekend and she's here and she was saying that she loves you. She made me promise that I was going to send you a hug and a kiss from her.
Oh, mwah, mwah. Oh, Tammy, nice to see you, and everyone in chat too. This is amazing. Yeah, Tammy's wonderful. I investigated with her on the USS Hornet, and we had such a great time. Great experiences. Very, very profound experience in the engine room there. So awesome. Can't wait to do it again.
All right.
So, okay, so Queen Mary. So, design concepts for the ship began in about around 1926. And this is when different countries were wanting to build the biggest and grandest liner. So, the Queen Mary was launched on September 26, 1934. She was a Cunard ocean liner, not a cruise ship, ocean liner designed to sail from Southampton to New York City via Cherbourg, France. And so she carried from her maiden voyage, May 27th, 1936. She carried people from all walks of life. You're talking about members of the aristocracy, dignitaries, celebrities, numerous celebrities, people from all over the world. And one of her claims to fame is that she helped to bridge the old world with the new. So it was literally a luxury to sail on board the Queen Mary for these pre-war years. Then, with the outbreak of World War II, the Queen Mary and her sister liner, the Queen Elizabeth, were requisitioned for troop ship duties during World War II for two reasons: their size and their speed. So, throughout World War II, she was a troop ship, hospital ship. She carried Italian and German war brides, and her capacity kept increasing from like 5,000 to 10,000 to 15,000, especially after the US entered the war. And it was July of 1943, and she still holds the record for this. She carried the most amount of human beings on any ship ever, and that was
Oh, wow.
16,683 souls, including servicemen and crew. So she was very successful during the war. I'm giving like the bare bones history here
Right.
just because I could go on and on and on, because I know people want to get to the paranormal side. So just very successful in World War II. She helped lessen the war by about 2 years, saved the lives of many, many, many men, women, and children. So then after the war ended, she did carry war brides, because a lot of these international war brides married U.S. servicemen. So they had to carry them over. And I think around 22,000 war brides actually sailed on the Queen Mary post-war, post-World War II. One of my good friends, her name is June Allen, and she was among the first wave of war brides. A dear friend of mine, she's actually, her stories in one of my books, RMS Queen Mary, Voices from Her Voyages. Just a lovely woman. She was among the first war brides in oh gosh, I forget the exact date, but the first wave of war brides. I should know that off the top of my head. Shame on me. But anyways, after World War II ended, she just resumed her pre-war peacetime sailing from New York to Southampton to New York via Cherbourg until she was retired on December 9th, 1967. And there were different places and entities that wanted to actually get the Queen Mary. And so Long Beach won that out at 3.45 million. So the ship's been moored in Long Beach ever since. Museum, hotel, restaurant, shops on board, all kinds of, they have weddings there. They have all kinds of events, high school, college reunions, you name it. She was closed during the pandemic, obviously. And so what ended up happening is the city of Long Beach, for the first time in, oh my gosh, since I think 78, I think it was, took control of the ship. So she's now she's managed by Evolution Hospitality, but the city of Long Beach now has authority and control, which is really good. So she
And wasn't
reopened it. Oh, go ahead.
wasn't there like a big scare that like it was never going to reopen? I mean, I remember people just panicking over this stuff, saying, "Oh my gosh, like what can we do? They're going to shut this down, and it's just going to cost too much to renovate it and fix it up." And
Yeah, some of those reports I think were a little bit embellished and inaccurate. I mean, the thought of scrapping, I believe, came up, but the cost to do that, from what I've heard,
Huge.
would be
Right.
more important than saving her. So, obviously, she prevailed because she's done that since her existence. I mean, I gave you the bare bones history, but there were very many near catastrophic events throughout her career that could have taken her. So, yeah, so she prevailed through the pandemic, and they a lot of renovations are going on. So probably what a lot of people read are, that the lifeboats needed to be removed because they were corroded and rotting. It's a good thing they were removed because they were harming her. And then just other renovations, small to large, and they're still doing that now. But I remember when those reports came out, and they talked about, oh my gosh, imminent capsize. That's not true. Not true at
Well,
all.
here's a question because I know you've been back recently since it's opened. I saw on
Mhm.
your page you had went to go
Few
visit.
times. Yeah, a few times.
With all the renovations that's been going on, because we know that a lot of times with haunted locations, when you do any kind of remodeling renovations, it stirs things up even more.
Right.
How was it when you went back?
That's a good question. I've many people have asked me that, and I'll say I probably haven't been on it enough to really notice. But then again, I'm so familiar with the ship, and a lot of the intelligent energies know me. So
Right.
maybe someone who's not as familiar with it going on would maybe be able to see that more than me. The times that I've been on since the pandemic have been pretty consistent, and the energy seems very excited to get it back, rolling again. I was worried about some, not worried about them, but a lot of these spiritual energies probably wondered, like, what's going on here? So I know I tried to telepathically communicate with them and say, okay, here's what's going on. Okay, you just have to be patient, all of this. But the general energy that I pick up from the ship and the people that work, obviously her crew, and then of course the spirits, very elated and excited to be back and get things rolling again. So that's my
Right.
take on it.
I have a question coming in from Twitter, and this is Jonathan, and he's asking what area or what room on the Queen Mary is the most haunted, and what's the
Oh,
story behind it?
okay. This is a good question. Now, before I answer that, I don't know if he's wondering about B340.
Okay.
Maybe or maybe not. And before I get into that, I would say for me, the entire ship is fair game. I've had experiences in lesser known areas, and I've had experiences in many of the hotspot areas. These areas are lower, the aft engine room, the boiler rooms, the green room, the former first and third class pool, for example. These areas are highly traveled to on the tours, but the hotel decks, so M, A, and B decks, pretty much you can have an experience anywhere on the ship. Just some areas are more known for activity just because they're talked about more and they're traveled to more. But there's a whole legend about B340. And so they recently, prior to COVID, renovated that where people can spend the night, and they provide, I haven't done it yet just because it's an exorbitant amount of money. Money goes into the ship. That's great. But they give people a Ouija board and some other items. So they're promoting it as a haunted room. But when you really look in the history of that room, and I talk about that in my book, Spirited Queen Mary, a lot of the rumors about it, how people were found dead in there. The maids were afraid to go clean the rooms at the time when the room wasn't even open. So there's a lot of discrepancies that aren't true with B340, but I have investigated it. I've captured EVPs. I've had experiences in there. One of my good friends, Tony Ashland, he used to work on board, and he was a tour guide. So he did the paranormal shipwalk tour and the dining with the spirits tours. And he had an experience where one of the portholes in that room in B340 seemingly opened by itself. And he tested it. And these porthole windows are extremely heavy. So for it to open up by itself, that to me is a little odd. I wasn't there at the time, but long-winded answer, just a lot of you can have an experience pretty much anywhere on the ship. In
Okay. I
my
mean,
in my experience,
it's interesting that you're saying that they're promoting now with this room and giving people a Ouija board. As we know in the field, A lot of us don't like them, including myself, and nor do I use them. But
Hmm.
I do know that they are a tool. And if, known
Yes.
how to use them correctly, that it can be fine. But if you're promoting it, to just anybody that's interested in the paranormal and go in and they don't know what in the hell they're doing and they're using a Ouija board, do you think that's really like smart?
I do not, and I'm with you on the whole Ouija board thing. Like you said, it's a tool. I believe it's a tool, just like an audio recorder.
Right,
In my opinion, I could be wrong, I could be right. I don't know. I think it's the negative connotations that are attached to the board that make it dangerous, not just the board itself. So I
right,
think people, when using the board, they want to emulate what they see in horror movies and things of that
right,
nature. And so and with the Queen Mary, and this happens with other haunted locations, but the Queen Mary, sadly, in my opinion, is often exploited, because, people, movies are filmed on board, TV shows are filmed on board. So in many ways, some of these events often exploit the ship's living history and make it more like, oh my gosh, people are going to go there expecting to see this or see that and want to emulate what they've seen on shows or on movies or things like that, and without even knowing the ship's history, because the
right.
history and her spirits and both of those interplay so beautifully to create this very paranormally active vessel. So,
Well, yeah, and if you've got people using Ouija boards, what
mhm,
stops them from trying to do rituals to open portals and
right.
bring in things that shouldn't be there, to cause havoc. I mean, I've seen things like this happen before, and it's like, I just feel that that's kind of like reckless. I feel like it's almost trying to, it's like a gimmick,
Yeah.
like, oh, come in and investigate the paranormal. Because, like a lot of places, they'll say, oh, you can come and investigate and we'll give you a K2 meter to use for the night. And people are like, oh my gosh, a free K2 for the night. Oh, I'm so
I
excited.
know.
So it's like, now, okay, well, we'll one up it. Hey, you can have a Ouija board. And again, somebody on their marketing team should have said, well, maybe that would not be a smart idea. But again, that's just my opinion. So I'm glad to see that. I mean, Chad, what do you think about them using or marketing the rooms with that room with a Ouija board?
I don't think that's a good idea at all. That's
Yeah.
absolutely no.
And you're getting people in there that don't have a lot of knowledge. Some of
Right,
them, I
right.
can't
So
say
they're just
all. They don't
weird.
Yes,
have, yeah, they don't have knowledge of the
Definitely
ship's
bad.
history or the paranormal activity, and they're going in, right? And so
right.
some of these are young people going in there just wanting to have fun. And it's not a haunted house, people. It's not like a Halloween haunted house,
Well, yeah, that's
Right.
how people view the
That's exactly.
paranormal hotspots as is like a theme park or a ride.
Hmm.
They go and they take the ride and it's all fun but definitely not the same.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree for
So
sure.
that's interesting because I didn't know anything about that. And yeah, that when you said that, I was like, oh, that would be a real concern.
A lot of places
Hmm.
will ban Ouija boards from
Right.
on the premises. Like, it's interesting that they're kind of advertising that. I don't know.
It's like I remember when Mateo put out the Barbie Ouija board,
What?
and
Oh
I
my gosh.
I just about lost it because I'm like,
Right?
are we serious? Like this is what we're doing now. Like we're
Hmm.
going to,
Really?
yeah.
They put out a Barbie Ouija board.
Oh yeah, it was a pink Barbie one with the pink
Wow.
planchette and everything, and it was like
Um,
big. Like I mean, it caused a gigantic stir. But I think even maybe last year or the year before, I still was finding them at Halloween at Halloween time. You can find
that's
so many
crazy.
different themed Ouija boards right now. It's crazy. I
And
doesn't
isn't
make
it nutty? It's so nutty. It is a tool, but it's the mindset that goes into it is what's the problem,
that's
in my
right.
opinion.
Stanley's asking, what is the craziest experience you've had on the ship?
Oh my goodness, this is so hard to pick just one. Oh gosh, because I've had so many just personal experiences, as well as audio evidence and photos. I would say one that sticks out was, I think it was around 2018, maybe a little bit sooner. No, I think it was 2000. No, no, it's before that, about 2015 or 16, around there. And I was actually on a guest on my friend's tour, Matt Schultz of Para Explorer Project. He does tours, weekend tours on the Queen Mary, and they're designed to be like a paranormal investigation. So I was on the tour with him and the guests, and we were in the boiler room number 4, where the old Disney stage was. And there were 5 boiler rooms in the ship. The forward engine room was technically the 5th boiler room, and then 4, 3, 2, 1. So I was in 4, and I was standing on the starboard forward. Starboard is the right side of a ship, by the way. So starboard forward end of that stage, and I was kind of in this daydream state. And all of a sudden, I saw something out of my right peripheral vision, and when I looked, I saw one of the most beloved resident energies on board, who actually was a documented crew death. His I'm just going to use his initials because the family gets very sensitive when
Sure.
he's talked about. Initials of JP. He came from Yorkshire. He was a fireman and bilge cleaner that came on the ship. His date was I think March 30th of 1966. So he had made, I think, 3 or 4 voyages, and on this particular voyage in July of 1966, he was working the aft engine room, and a crew member found him tragically wedged, crushed in watertight door number 13, which is on the starboard
Oh,
shaft alley side of the aft engine room. So the doctors and nurses were called. They administered morphine, and sadly, tragically, he passed away. And so he's been spotted, he's been seen, he's been heard. I've seen him many times. I've heard him audibly many times. We have EVPs of him, which I can maybe play one through the mic if you want.
sure.
Uh, so this time I was standing on the stage, and I looked over to my right, and there he was from about the shoulders, neck, and head. So shoulders up, kind of in like a sepia tone, but that the lighting in there is weird anyways. And he didn't say anything. He floated toward me with a smile on his face, and then floated back and dissipated right before my eyes. Now, before that, we were doing an EVP session in the aft engine room. And for some reason, I was really channeling him more so than I usually do. So I find a connection between those two experiences. But he seems content on board, one of the most beloved residents on board. And then another experience was in A167, and this was weird because it played out in slow motion. So it was around 2 o'clock in the morning. There were 2 rooms. I was in one, and then my friend was in the other. She was fast asleep because I checked on her when I heard this. I cracked the bathroom door. No, I shut the bathroom door, so it was latched. Then at one point, and again, I wasn't asleep at all. I was completely awake. I was laying down, but I would definitely was awake, and I heard the doorknobs rattling. And when I looked, the bathroom door was ajar, and I saw the bottom leg of a person, a male. It looked like he was wearing like fancy dress pants. And then I just was like, okay, let me lay back down, just kind of just vigil, do a vigil, just experience it. Then I heard rustling about in the room, like going through our plastic bags. That's when I looked to see, is this my friend perhaps making noise? She was fast asleep down there, down the hall. She wasn't even moving. So then I was laying down. Then all of a sudden I felt, and this didn't scare me. It was a comforting sort of, whoever it was peaceful. And I felt 2 hands, or what felt like 2 hands, pressed down on me as I was in bed, but I got this most peaceful sensation, and then that was it. But it played out. It seemed like the whole thing lasted 30 seconds maybe, which is like super long.
Interesting.
But there's
Interesting.
so many more. I mean, those 2 really stick out though.
Now, have you had any like really like frightening experiences on there, or had they pretty much just been interactions that were very low key that
Yeah, I mean, I've had intense moments, but nothing that, has really frightened me. I am not scared on board at all. I could be on board by myself. I'm fine. It's
well
just, but I'm
that's nice to
familiar
know.
with yeah, I'm familiar with the ship's energy, and I really do think some people may like think I'm nuts for saying this, and that's fine. But I do believe in my heart that the Queen Mary is sentient. I think that it's very much alive, has its own emotions, its own heart. It can think, it can communicate. So I think the ship is almost one gigantic spirit. And then there's her resident human energies and animal energies on board. And so they kind of play off each other. And I think that's what makes it so consistently active.
So I think going back to, my previous, do you think by allowing like all these new investigators to go in there and try, because we know now that the big thing is demons and trying to summon demons and bring in
Mhm.
demons and dark things, do you think that it could change the atmosphere of the Queen Mary, or do you think that she's so alive that she would protect herself from?
Bingo.
Okay.
Bingo. You're on it with that. And again, this is subjective for me
Yes. Right.
based
Right.
on almost 20 years of investigating this ship and being, I mean, I practically, it's my second home.
Right.
In all my heart, I do not sense evil or anything on board. Of course, the ship had tragic occurrences and people have died on board, but there's nothing on there, in my opinion, in my experience, that's malevolent or evil. Even if people go on there and want to, they're seeing a horror movie and they want to go try to conjure something up. I agree with you. I think the ship it protects herself. So it's almost that she shields it from that. That's my
That's
take. That's my take. I could so and based on what I've seen and experienced, that's it seems to be that's what it is.
well, good. That makes me feel better because again, I've seen a lot of people go in and do like a lot of stuff that make things so different,
Yeah.
and not in a good way. And so I always hate to see things like that.
Yeah.
So where do you see the Queen Mary going from here? Do you think, that she's going to continue to have like all of the drama and issues around it, or do you think that maybe it's now on an uptick that not in a good place?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. I think based on who I've talked to, I know a lot of the staff on board. With the reopening, there's a lot of plans for her future in her golden age. So we're just going to have to see how that plays out. I don't want to say too much from what I've heard in case I'm,
Right.
incorrect or it doesn't play out. But in this goes back into her being sentient. And this may sound crazy and weird, and I get it. I get it, especially for someone who has never been there and doesn't know anything about it. The Queen Mary's almost in charge of her own destiny. I think that she is in control, and she will get what she wants. Sometimes that takes a while, but eventually, whatever her future is, it's how she would want it to play out. So, if that makes sense.
Well, to me it does. What about you, Chad?
Some people are like, "Whoa."
That's a concept I've never really heard, but it's interesting. It makes sense.
Mhm.
See, but this is why I love these kinds of conversations. And like I'm sitting here watching, Chad's face and some of the things, and it's just like, okay, that's I didn't think about that one. But I like that, because again, that was my question. I didn't know, but with you saying it's so sitting, I would think that okay, if it's kind of has of a life it's its own, I would see that it would really try to protect itself from
Mhm.
having things like that work,
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And
I
I'm
like,
not the only person to feel this way. There have been so many like former crew and passengers, even some of my close ship friends, which we call ourselves, our Queen Mary family. Even the staff on board now, there's this draw to it. There's this connection. And Captain John Treasure Jones on the last peacetime voyage, he actually brought the ship into Long Beach on December 9th, 1967. And he said this. He said the Queen Mary, he said this now. He said the Queen Mary is as closest to a human being of any ship I've ever commanded. So see, it's not just me.
right.
There's this feeling with other people. So
Interesting.
yeah.
I have Angela from Instagram, and she's asking, other than the Queen Mary, what is the next best location you've investigated?
Oh my goodness. It's so hard to pick one or another because they're all so unique. I would say for me, the Rancho Buena Vista Adobe, which is in Vista, California. So it's about like 25-30 minutes north of San Diego,
Okay.
Oceanside to the west, and then San Marcos to the east. And so we've been investigating the Rancho Buena Vista Adobe since about 2010. And we've also, since
Wow.
2011, been hosting the Spirits of the Adobe tours, which are paranormal investigation type tours that are fundraisers for the Adobe. Just because of our tenure there and the amount of times we've been, it's just a very special place for us, and it's active. It's not as well known as some of the other areas and locations in San Diego, but it is active. They have weddings there. They have school events there. It's a beautiful property. We've had really good luck there with instrumental transcommunication, and I know that that can be very subjective and controversial, but we're very meticulous, of course, when we do these types of audio experimentation. And for some reason, just really clear ITC results that correlate to what we're talking about or the history, things of that nature. So,
Yeah, because I've never heard that. I mean, I
mhm.
went to San Diego. I mean, I've only been to San Diego once, but I went to old San Diego because I went to like the Whaley House
Yeah,
and a couple, the Mexican restaurant across the road that was uh, haunted,
yep,
and the graveyard and all of that. So it was very interesting. But I was like looking, I was like, oh, I need to find more places. And I went to go visit my girlfriend who's in the paranormal too. And so she was telling me about different places. She never told me about that. And as long as I've known you, I don't think I knew
yeah.
that you were
I
doing
don't
that. That's
think we've,
weird.
yeah, I don't think we've talked about it. It's one of those lesser known locations,
But those
which
are the
in a
ones
way is
I
a good
love.
way.
Yes, that's what I
Exactly.
absolutely love. We talk about this all the time because
Yeah.
I don't understand why people, pay all these exorbitant prices to
Hmm.
go to these overly investigated, I feel, locations. Like I want to go somewhere where not everybody's investigated at. I mean, again, everybody's going to have their own experience at each location, but when it hasn't been investigated a million times. It's just a different energy that you
Right.
experience when you're investigating. I mean, especially as a psychic, it is a whole different
Oh,
realm.
absolutely. And you talk about overly investigated, and that's an important those words are important because places, in my opinion, that have been overly investigated, it creates two separate situations. You have one, uh, the activity that might not even be paranormal, but it could be something that's caused from like someone's projections, or maybe they're going in power of suggestion and bias. And then you have what I call authentic paranormal activity, where someone goes in and they actually capture something. But it's like when you're overly investigated, it's already contaminated, in my opinion, you know?
Yeah. And
So,
I've seen a lot of people. I've seen people come in and have stuff follow that's following them, end up
mhm,
deciding to stay. I mean, people's residual energy that they're just giving off.
right,
They might be in a crappy mood when they're investigating, or something may have happened, or they may have been sad, and it's just like they release there.
right.
It's like it's almost stifling. It's like claustrophobic when I walk into places that have had a lot of investigating done.
I
Where
agree.
new ones you go in and the energy, all those heightened and excited, it's not thick. Well, you probably understand what I'm saying, but
Oh, I
it's a
do.
whole different,
Mhm,
feel, and what you can pick up on is so much clearer.
right. I agree. That's a
All
good way to
right.
put it.
All right, let me go. You have any questions for Nicole? I'm going to go back onto social media questions. Chad, do you have a question for her?
Oh no, I don't. No, no. Oh wait, maybe one. So that the famous spirit of what's the little girl's name? Jackie, is it?
Oh, Jackie, yes.
Is that something that still happens on the boat?
Yes, yeah, absolutely, and it's interesting. I've done a lot of research into her. She's not So Peter James was the late resident
Right.
psychic paranormal investigator on board. Sadly, he's no longer with us.
Right.
He actually coined Jackie, I think around 1991, 92, claims that she passed away 6 or 7 years old, passed away in the second class pool. There's a former first and third, and then there's a second class, which was stripped out in the Long Beach conversion. The former first and third still remains, I'm going to get to that. I'm going on a tangent. People might be like, wait, what? First and third? So first class, cabin class pool, but then when air travel became very uh, popular for people, less affluent people were sailing on the Queen Mary, so they opened that pool up to the third class, just different times. So yeah, so Jackie, myself and other researchers have done some extensive investigating into her, and so far there's no forensic evidence to suggest that either a human being by the name of Jackie was ever on board, and of course whether or not she passed in the second class
So
pool.
is this phenomenon still picked up? Do you guys ever?
Yeah, we still pick it up. Yeah, I think she's real. She's very active. One of the most common energies that people pick up, very active.
Mm.
I've actually seen her with my own eyes. So she could be like a twin sister to Shirley Temple.
Oh, wow.
So picture that. Very active, but I also wonder if there's almost like a psychokinetically created version of her on board too, just because of how many people go on and they're like, I want to talk to Jackie, I want to see Jackie. But no, she's real, in my opinion, very lovely, very intelligent.
Haven't been able to validate that story, correct?
The person,
Right.
That, yeah. Interesting.
I have theories, but again, they're just theories.
Right.
So.
I get that. All right. Regina's asking, when did you know that you first had psychic abilities, and what was the first clue?
Oh my goodness. Good question. First of all, I think everyone has the capacity to be psychic. Just some people are more open to it,
I
right?
agree. Mm-hmm.
More open, more practiced at it, right? So I think I knew as a child, but I didn't know, if that makes sense. Because I've always had that ability, but I wasn't as a child. I didn't say to myself, oh, well, you're empathic, you're intuitive, right? It didn't dawn on me until more when I was in the field. I would say the experience with my grandmother when I was in college, I think from that point on, I think she was letting me know. Now that I reflect on it, I think that experience I had with her was her way of letting me know, you have this, because she had it. My mom has it, refuses to admit it, but she has it too. So it's like a maternal thing. I shouldn't say refuse. She's opening herself up more now.
Right.
But the experience with my grandmother, yeah, because that was so profound. And just I'm sure you can attest to this, being in the field and doing this type of work, these abilities naturally just start to grow.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's kind of what I've noticed for me.
The more you use them, yes, the stronger they get. Absolutely.
Right.
Okay, so all right, now we've got Dion, and he is asking, what is the scariest experience you've ever had?
Oh my gosh, scary. Oh, and I'm one of these. It's so funny.
Obviously, my audience is all about scary tonight because
I love it though, right?
We don't want to hear about the nice spirits. We want to hear about the scary ones.
I know. Oh my gosh, you guys, I love it. I don't get scared. I really don't. I know that sounds weird. It takes a lot for me to get frightened with this work. But there was one experience, and I've mentioned this before, that stands out. And so I can't, because it's now a university, I can't really give it away, but it's in Camarillo. Some of you may know what I'm talking about. It's it was an old hospital at one point. Okay, so we were there and we were setting up a static infrared camera. And all of a sudden, okay, I was setting it. I sat down on the floor. I don't remember why, but I did. And all of a sudden, I saw this 7-foot tall, black humanoid shadow figure, like morph out of something. And he charged at us, like he charged. And so it wasn't so much that I was afraid, but I was startled, and I felt he wants me to leave. So I'm leaving. And we went out for like a minute or so and then came back in. I think it was just not necessarily a classic shadow figure. It was just one of the entities there that appeared in shadow form. But it was just that it was more of a startling experience than anything else.
Okay. I mean,
You know what place I'm talking about. You're
I
nodding your head.
absolutely, you know I do. I was right
Me.
there back then. So yes.
Yep.
So I have a question for you. So I had an experience a few years ago, which was the first time I'd ever had this experience where I was actually jumped by a spirit and completely took over me to basically give the message. Now, you and I both know that like I can see him, I can communicate, so you don't need to jump in me and like just tell me what you want to
Yeah.
say and I can do it. Have you ever had that happen? Because I'll tell you, it was the scariest thing. And then I'm 56 years old, so like in the the first 50 years of my life, I had never experienced anything like that.
Like
But now that
that.
I talk to more people with abilities, they have at some point, experienced something like that. How is it for you? Have you ever experienced that?
I can't say that I was ever jumped by an entity, but I've experienced one time at a library investigating one literally walking right through me. And
Yeah, I
it's
have
hard to
that.
put it in words, but it was such an intense sensation, not scary or anything, but it was just their energy went through me for a second.
Yeah.
And it was almost like a momentary sense of vertigo, a sense of like freezingness for like a second and some electrical activity, like if you walk through a spider web. So I've had that. And then, of course, I know when I'm channeling someone, I just know, but I've never actually had that experience where I'm actually jumped or I turn into that
I mean,
entity for a second or anything.
I could hear myself speaking and what I was saying, but
Mhm.
it was nothing that I was saying or thinking, so
Right, right,
I also didn't have any control over my body. He had complete control over my actions and my voice, what I was saying.
right.
And when eventually she got so freaked out, she like ran down the stairs and ran out the door, and me with him in me went running down the stairs after her. But as soon as I went through the double doors of the building, of course, he's contained to the building, so it broke.
What were you doing at the moment, like the moment, or how were you feeling at that moment right before that happened?
Well, so the first problem was we went up there and on a Friday, and that Saturday was supposed to be the day that I was going to go to her uh, business and I was going to do a walkthrough. I didn't know anything about it. They asked me what I walk through and see what I could pick up on. So I like, yes. So that Friday night, we decided, you know, we don't drink when we investigate. So we'll drink tonight and we'll investigate tomorrow night. And so we were out drinking, and then a bunch of paranormal people from up there all ran into her and they're like, hey, can we go over to your business and, real quick and blah, blah. So she said, yeah. And so she turned to me and said, hey, would you like to come across the street with me for a minute and check out my apartment I have over there? And, I mean, sober Christina was said, no, that's probably not a good idea. I've been drinking, but, drunk Christina thought that was a great idea. So I
Oh,
went
so
there. And when I got into the apartment, she said, do you see anything? And I'm seeing a guy standing literally right in front of me. And I said, oh, yeah, I see somebody. And she said, well, what does he look like? And I started explaining what he looked like. And when I started explaining what he looked like, he had his facial expressions was like, oh my God, she can actually see me. And
mm,
before I could even finish saying anything, he ran full force at me. And the next thing I know, I'm saying all this crazy stuff and I have no idea what's going on.
you don't
So
remember it? Like you don't
I
remember what
remember
he's
everything. No, I remember everything. I'm hearing myself what I'm saying. It's just
mm,
those were none of my thoughts or my thing. He was having a whole conversation about it's really me. It wasn't me. It was the house. That's what
whoa.
caused this. You must forgive me. I can't move on until you do. The other thing was like, you have to believe it's me. If you don't believe me, and had me reach my hand back onto this table, and it's dark, on this table, and I pick up this box and put it in her hand, and I'm like, Now you know it's me. And she looked at the box, and when she looked at the box, you could tell she recognized something because she just burst into tears and took off
Oh my
running.
goodness.
The next day, I found out that that was actually the last gift she had given him. It was a some cufflinks. She had ended up divorcing him. He actually died in that apartment, and they hadn't found him for 3 weeks. So, in right where I was
Oh,
at. So, yeah, it was definitely interesting. Interesting, but again, I know better, and see that's another thing I tell people all the time too is when you're investigating, do not drink, do not be under any kind of substances, because when you are, things like this can definitely happen. You cannot protect, and you cannot have protection around you if you're under the influence. And it bothers me because
absolutely.
I see a lot of these events now that they're doing like a VIP cocktail hour
I
before
know
you're
it. I know.
investigating. And I'm like, oh, that's not very smart. But
Mm-mm.
yeah, so I learned my lesson. That won't ever happen again. But
I have a story to follow that. I mean, that's a good example to give too, because I noticed that too. A lot of these events, it's like social hour, cocktails. It's no, you don't. If you're going to go investigating, no, right? Not
right,
absolutely not. I think you should be alcohol free at least 24 hours before you really do some serious investigating. But there on our Rancho Buena Vista Adobe tours, this was many, many years ago when we first started. There was a woman that came and she had been at the Mexican restaurant next door, had maybe one or two margaritas, and we were in the middle of what's called the Major Domo room doing a spirit box ITC session. And she about collapsed and almost fainted. So just being that could have been a physical thing having nothing to do with the paranormal, and that would have happened to her anyways. I don't know, but that's an example. So we had to she had to leave, of course, because she couldn't even like stand up or, pretty much talk. I mean, she got really, really drunk. And it was interesting because when she came, she didn't appear it. And we have it says it on the website, do not drink any attendees that come under the influence will be asked to leave. And that's happened to us once with someone who smoked weed, and then someone who that lady who had alcohol. And it's so awkward to have to tell them to leave, but we explain why, and then they understand. But it's scary. It's really, really scary.
I see it happen a lot, especially again at these paracons. Everybody's
Hmm.
drinking and hanging out beforehand, and then everybody lines up to go do the investigations. And
I
you know
know.
I know it's always been dangerous, but like I said, when once you experience the repercussions of something like that, it shakes you to like, okay, like you need to realize what you're doing, and not. But again, see, that was the thing, because when I was drinking, normally I would say, no, I've been drinking. That's not a good idea. But the fact I had been drinking, it just completely threw away caution to the wind. Was like, sure, sounds like a great idea. So it can tell you that can change even your perception of how you're going to do things. And again, if you're not in a good headspace and in control, yes, some really, really bad things can happen. All
Lesson.
right,
That's a good lesson and well said.
right. Okay, one final question from Jennifer. She says, have you ever had an experience that affected your life or the way you investigate haunted places?
Yes, I have. There's a few. I'll share a couple. So one really has nothing to do with paranormal activity per se, but we were investigating a haunted. I shouldn't say haunted, but it was a restaurant in Oceanside called the Hungry Hunter. That's the old name. Now it's the Hunter Steakhouse, and it's built on top of a Native American burial ground. So the restaurant has had a lot of activity. We went in and immediately determined, okay, there's definitely some high EMF consistently throughout. But then so that's what we found out immediately in there. So then we were about maybe an hour or so into our investigation, broken up in two teams of three. I was downstairs in the bar area, and then a team was upstairs. Two-way radios, an investigator radios in to me. I had the other two-way radio, and she said, "Stay where you are. This place has just been robbed." So here we are. We had our emergency protocol set in place for this, which every team should have. And so we sat there, we didn't move and the cops came. It was a whole thing. So two men came in the kitchen armed with the gun. The cops were called. There was a helicopter flying above. They had a dog there as well. So when the police arrived, they asked us to stay in case they needed to question us. And we had our investigation permission slip signed by the manager, everything out to show the police. So luckily, they were captured and all of that. No one got injured, but that could have turned out to be an entirely different story. So just when you're investigating, make sure you have those safety procedures set in place, CPR certified, BLS certified, at least someone on the team or on the investigation with that. So that's something that really taught me, like, wow, anything can really happen on these types of investigations. And then other ones, and there have been more than one, where we've been able to capture, for example, an EVP or a disembodied voice of someone's departed loved one. They listen to it and they can tell right away, oh my gosh, that's my husband, or that's my grandmother. And the experience, it fulfills them.
Right.
And those types of experiences are really, really heartwarming because there's the human element and the human condition that we put into our work, and the respect and the empathy, not just for ourselves, but for the clients and for the energies as well. So it's those types of heartwarming experiences that really, really stay with me. That's a good question. I like
Well,
that.
why don't you? I know you got a whole list, but why don't you throw up some of your upcoming events? Because I know there's a lot, and if you want to send me the list too, then I'll also post it so people will have that and they can click on the links and things like that if they're interested.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great. Oh, for some reason this year it's insane. So I was invited to do an author workshop at the Vista Library in September about like archiving and research. I know that's not really paranormal at all, but I just thought I'd mention it. Lots of presentations. I'll be at the OC Paracon, which is organized by Henry San Miguel. And so last year was the very first on site conference for it in Anaheim, California. So I'll be doing that October 6th and 7th, or 6th through 8th. And then I just have a lot of presentations coming up, businesses, libraries. I have about like 14 or 15 different presentation topics. So I have a lot of that, shows, some upcoming podcast, radio interviews, and a potential TV filming project that's in the works. So that's about it. And then, oh, of course, our book that Marie D. Jones and Denise Agnew and I are writing. It's an anthology about women in the paranormal. So it's groundbreaking women in the paranormal. And that is called Women on the Fringe, Groundbreaking Women in the Paranormal. That's going to debut March of 2024. So if you or anyone would be interested, let me know. I think this month is the last month that we're taking submissions.
Well, let me know. I mean, I do things
I'll,
across the board, so
I'll send you I was going to do that actually. So thanks for reminding me. So I can send you the information and just let me know if you want to be interested or not.
I'd be happy to contribute. I
Sweet.
mean, yeah, I've done a lot of the. I did some things, for like women in the paranormal and things like that. I
Yeah,
love that we're starting to get out there because it's so been dominated,
I
by
know.
the men in the field. But it's good to see legit and reputable researchers out there representing us, because it really opens it up.
Oh, thank you. Oh my God, that makes me cry. Like, thank you so much, Pat. Oh my gosh, thank
That's
you.
that's amazing. And
Oh,
so, all right, I want to again thank you so much, Nicole. Like I always love to have you on. Just love you to pieces. And yeah, we'll definitely get together. And my intent is to get out to San Diego,
yes,
soon so that we can get together and do something for sure. And
sure.
again,
We
for
could do
everybody,
like an event out here or something. I don't know. We'll think of something.
yeah, that would be a lot of fun. And again, for anybody who missed the beginning of the show, starting this Thursday, I will be bringing back Top Secret News, where we were going to be discussing all the UFO stuff, conspiracy stuff,
Ooh.
Bigfoot, you name it, we've got it. Direct energy weapons, implants, black-eyed children, men in black, underground bases. Like I said, it's going to cover everything. And so I've had a lot of you asking me to bring it back. We're finally going to be coming back. And so look forward to my page. Keep an eye on it. I will be putting out all of the links this week for this week's debut show, where I am going to have Steve Hasseltine. And he is, I've had him on the show before, and he wrote a book as well as doing a documentary on the Rendlesham Forest incident, which was very it's in the UK, so very much like the Roswell incident that we had here in the US. So,
oh my gosh.
yes, he's amazing. I know some of the people who are actually in the military that were taken by these aliens, or got inside of the UFO. So we're going to be talking about all that. So if you're into UFO stuff, it's a show you don't want to miss. Plus, we're going to get his take on all of this UFO sightings. And we know they've increased here. Have they increased in the UK? Because we already know there's a lot going on in the UK, but it seems to be that this is happening all over the world. So we're going to get his take on all of this.
Isn't there something too in Peru? I thought it was Peru.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, they're talking about their 7 feet humanoid type aliens that are like stripping people's faces off.
Yeah, right. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we got a lot to talk about, and I don't think this is gonna, this topic is gonna be there for a very long time. I think we're gonna have a lot of things, and as well, you guys, I have the premonitions, I have the precog dreams, so we're gonna be covering those on that show. Just all kinds of stuff. So it'll be a great show. So if you guys have topics and stuff, get a hold of me. And again, make sure, Nicole, that you send me your list of all the things that you're doing and for your books, so that if our listeners are interested, they can go and order them. And make sure to go and check her out. Grab these books. They're amazing. So we will definitely keep you in the loop. Go to the event page. I'll keep it up. Go to the discussion, and it will be right there. Hey, Gary, it was nice to have you here. With that being said, we're at the end of our time. Thank you so much. Make sure to join us next week, as well as me this Thursday on Top Secret News. That being said, love you guys.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.